Hi, everyone. Another one of the requests that came in this week was on how to create cloth in Maya. And that's one of the different effects options that we're looking at this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I have on this scene. In this scene, very simple scene, I have a cylinder that is going to act as a flagpole, and then a plane with a lot of subdivisions, as you can see, that will be acting as my cloth. Now this, I probably need to add a little bit more subdivisions. So I'm gonna go ahead and increase the value of that to about 48 by 48. So I have a little bit more density on my vertices. The denser your geometry, the smoother your deformations are gonna be with the cloth. Now there's such thing as too much density, and that can slow down your rendering, as we know. So with this done, let's go ahead and make sure that I select that plane. It's just this basic plane. And under End Particles, I want to make this, sorry, under nCloth, I want to make this a Create nCloth option. So if I go to its options, there's really nothing there to choose other than what's the space output that I want to use. Local is just fine. So I'll go ahead and click Create Cloth. Now, when I play this back, basically this just drops and nothing happens because there's some gravity attached to the cloth, but the cloth has no deformers or it's not hitting anything. And so for it to actually get deformed, I need to make sure that it is hitting something. So in this case, I want to select the flagpole and I want to make that under nCloth. I want to make it a passive collider. Now what that's going to do is going to create a bit of friction with the cloth, and the cloth is barely touching that pole. So you're going to see that when I play this back, we're going to start getting some deformation on the cloth, and that's because it rubbed against this passive object. Now let's go ahead and rewind this. And let's make the flag, the actual cloth, stick to the pole. So to do so, what I want to do is I want to select the cloth. I want to right click it and go into its vertex mode. And let's focus in this area, the area that is touching the flagpole. So I'm going to grab a selection to select all those vertices on that edge, on that very edge. And then I'm going to shift select the flagpole. Now with those two things selected, what I want to do is I want to create a constraint that makes sure that this cloth is attached to the flagpole right at that point where those vertices were selected. Let's go ahead and go under End Constraint and choose Point to Surface, which is what we want. We want these points to be attached to the surface of the cylinder. So I'm going to choose Point to Surface. And when I play this back, basically I have created a connection, almost like glue, from the cloth to the flagpole. And so you're going to get the flagpole, the flag to drop, and you see the deformation as it hits the actual flagpole. Now this is connected by the constraint to the flagpole. So let me stop the animation there, and I want to add some motion to the flagpole. So let's go ahead and select the flagpole and add some translate keyframes to it. So I'm going to start at frame 1. That position change is going to be moving the flag. I'm going to move the flag in that direction. So let's go ahead and move it over 45 seconds. Let's say I want to move this flag in that direction, and then at 60 seconds I want to go ahead, or 80 seconds, let's say. I'm just putting numbers here. I'm going to move it in this direction and see what happens. Now let's rewind the whole timeline and let's play this back and see what happens. And as you can see, my pole is pulling the flag. Now you notice that there's some jumpiness on the actual animation, and the reason for that is because the program is trying to calculate all the physical changes that are happening to that flag as it is being pulled by the flagpole. What is happening to that geometry, and you see that there's some jumpiness on the way it is connected. So in order to avoid that from happening, when you have a lot of detail happening on your geometry, you want to stop your playback under the preferences for the timeline from the regular 24 FPS times 1, which is what we have been working with, and change it to play every frame. Click Save and play this back. Now you're going to get smoother animation this way. You see that the geometry is actually solving the way it is supposed to solve, because we're giving enough time to the computer for the computer to calculate the deformations of the cloth. Now, before I exit this, what I want to do is this is the default settings for the cloth that we have been working with. Let's go ahead and rewind all the way and select that nCloth object and go to its attributes editor. If you notice, that is actually a node that exists within the actual plane. And so we probably have options to modify this from here, and we sure do. We have things such as collision, dynamic properties, and so on. We can affect things such as bounciness, friction, and so on. One of the cool things about this settings is that I can select the object. And with that nCloth shape object selected, what I can do is go to its presets and select any of these different types of fabric that already have been preset into the node. So it's similar to the way we do when we activate different materials when we're working with standard surface materials. Basically, here you have preset settings for different types of material. So in this, for different types of cloth. So what I want to do, let's say, for example, if I switch this from what it is right now, which is the standard, to t-shirt replace, my dynamics are going to be slightly different on the cloth. It might be a little bit stiff compared to the previous one, which might be more to my liking. Let me rewind that and switch this to silk and see what effect it has on the animation. That seems to be a little bit smoother and perhaps a little bit more like what flag material is supposed to look like. So this works really well. Now, if you want to see this play in real time, you might want to create an nCache for this. And to do so, what you want to do is you want to go under, with the object selected, go under nCache, create nCache, and object. And what that's going to do is going to create a rapid blast of what you have animated, and it's going to keep it in memory. Now, when you play this back, because the cache has been created, let's go back and rewind, it's going to play at a real speed. So I can now go ahead and go back to my preferences and switch back to 24 FPS and see this playing back at real speed. This is how the animation will play if I were to export it as a video.